Hey everybody, I'm Kelly and welcome to KO Airbrushing Design's next tutorial. This one is going to be on paint mixing and how to set up your brush. So in this case we're going to be doing the paint mixing. It's going to be specifically on House of Kolor paint. So it's a solvent based automotive paint. If you're using something else, you're definitely going to, most likely, if you're not using another solvent based paint, you're definitely going to have differences in the way you want to mix. Also going to be working with an Iwata Micron with a 0.23, so everything is kind of set up to work with that specific brush in this case. Obviously you can definitely use this setup with other brushes, so that's not an issue whatsoever. Okay, so yeah, I'll get started here and show you how to set up your brush and how to mix your House of Kolor paint. Okay everybody, so this is my brush. Like I said, you're looking at an Iwata Micron. Normally my trigger stop, like I've been told by people that I seem to set my brush up differently. I don't think I set it up any differently. I think it's just a combination of how I mix my paint, set my brush, and use my air pressure to be able to set the brush up the way that I do. But apparently I set my brush and everything I use up a little bit different than most people do. So that's up to you to decide. Whether you like doing it the way that I do it or not is totally up to you. It depends what you're trying to do with your brush and what kind of an effect you're trying to achieve. Okay, so my trigger stop here at the back, normally that is either not in my brush at all, or it's backed off to the point where it doesn't have any effect. I'm just going to take that off because, like I said, normally I have that off. Now, as far as my needle setup and everything is concerned, I don't have any special springs in this or anything else. This is all stock, 0.23. And so when I set up my needle, let's see if I can get this up here and get it into focus for you guys. My needle is in as far as it can go. Like, it's up snug into the tip. Tightened up. That's all there is to it. That's it for my brush setup. It is not a complicated thing at all. Now, as far as the paint goes, the paint that I'm using, and you're looking at the House of Kolor Shimmering line of paints. This is a blue blood, so this is an automotive base coat paint. So if I'm going to be painting a car with it, for example, and doing like a background or a base coat, your mix is going to be 1-to-1. You're going to be using a bigger brush like an LPH 80 or something like that for spraying larger areas. For airbrushing, I mix it totally different. So I have some here that I've already got in a jar. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on this for you guys so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I get these little stir stick type things at the dollar store. They're just little wooden skewers, but they work great for doing your paint. So this paint has been thinned out a little bit, but not enough to work for the airbrush. Not the way I want to do it anyway. So when you look at this, you've got a pretty good coverage on your color. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. Okay, you guys might not be able to see that still. So you can't really see the wood grain through the paint here. It's got a good coverage to it, right? That's a little bit too thick for what I do. Actually, not a little bit too thick. It's a bit too thick. So when I mix this up, what I use is two things. I'll open this up again. Okay. So this is RU315 House of Kolor, and it is a retarder. So it's going to slow your paint from drying too fast. It helps eliminate tip dry, that kind of thing. And I just put a little bit in there, like not very much, maybe a quarter of an eyedropper to, and I'm using baby food jars here just in case you want to know. Getting hard to come by, but that's what I'm still using until I run out of them.
So yeah, we could just put a little bit of the RU315 in there, and then I use an RU311 medium reducer. You can also get a fast reducer or a slow reducer depending on what you're trying to do. Slow reducer again will do almost what the RU315 will do in a medium. So I mean, you could eliminate that process if you really wanted to. So now when I'm mixing my paint, what I want to see is I want to see the paint run off the side of the jar fairly quickly and be able to see through the jar. Right now, I can't do that. If I look through the side of the jar, the paint is still covering the glass quite a bit. I'm shooting for a mix that is just about the thickness of milk, maybe a little bit thinner. Now, one of the ways I know I'm getting close is, zoom in on this a little bit. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that or not, but there's a froth from stirring on top of the paint. Okay, so that's getting close. I'm still getting a little bit more coverage on the wood than I want, but it is getting closer. So like right now, it is starting to run down. You can see a little bit of the wood grain coming through. It is running down on the glass in the jar. So this is really, really close now. So I usually start with a 1-to-1 mix. So 1 part paint, 1 part reducer, and a little bit of the RU315. And then I add reducer until I get it to the point where I want it. So right now with where it is, I'm going to hook up my brush, we'll fill it up, and we'll see how it sprays. Now clear coats again, stuff like that, those you're going to be running 1-to-1. Candies again are going to be mixed to your taste. So candies, you've got your candy, you've got your carrier, and then you're also going to have your reducer. Yeah, this should actually work fairly good. It's not too far off. Might be just a tick thick yet. We shall see. Put you over there. There's a little red mark on the canvas here, but what I'm actually going to do is flip this over now. I just used the back side while I was doing the mixing. So I'll flip that over. I'll open that up a little bit. So now when you check your paint, you should be able to do a very fine line with it, or you should be able to do a very wide gradient without adjusting the brush at all. And what I shoot for when I'm setting up my brush is, like I said, my trigger's all the way forward. When I push down to get my air, I'll have to adjust my air now so that when I hit the bottom of that stroke is where my paint kicks in slightly. And then I can pull back to add paint as I want it. But I always want it set up, in my case, now this is not everybody by any means, but this is the way I set mine up. I like to know that my paint is going to start when I hit the bottom, because then that way I always know where my paint is going to start. I don't have to search for it. It's always in the same place, okay? So I'll give this a shot here now. Let's see what happens. So like I said, you should be able to do a fine line, or you should be able to do a nice gradient. So if you can't, then it's a matter of adjusting your air pressure until you get it exactly where you like it to be. And that, again, is your personal preference. So right now my paint's not starting there. I'm actually having to pull back, but not much, so it's very close. But as you can see, I can do a pretty fine line already, so the paint is a little thicker than what I like it to be, just a hair, like I said. So what I'll do is I'll increase my air pressure a little bit till I get it. Okay, a little bit more, getting closer. There we go. And when you are spraying such a small amount of paint, even with the retarder in it and the reduction and everything, there you will still get some tip dry. But there, it's coming in pretty good. It's controlling pretty nice. But like I said, I think it needs to be thinned out just a hair more. So I'm just going to toss this paint back in there. And just reduce it a little bit more. Stir it up again. And again, got that nice froth on the top there. And we're getting there. Yeah, that's really close now. We were close before, but this is really close. Like I said, the other stuff was just a tick on the thick side. So this is closer. I'm just going to get all that paint out of the brush. And reload. Stuff. There we go. Yeah, so now I've just got a very, very slight pressure back to get my paint in at this. So I could actually thin that out a little bit more. But you're also getting to the point now where you got to be really careful, because the paint is getting really, really thin. So it's not hard to overpower your medium and end up getting blow marks. So this is where you have to start being really careful. Now, as far as a nice blend goes, or a nice fade, oh yeah, that's, you can get a nice fade with that for sure. So that works nice. You're still getting a decent coverage, but it's still giving you good control. And pretty decent line control right now too. So that's basically it. It's just a matter of mixing your paint to the point where you're comfortable with it. Not going too far, because like I said, it's a very, very fine line between getting the right pressure and not overpowering the page, right? And that's one of the reasons why, because my paint is so thin when I'm working with it, that's one of the reasons why I like to have my trigger set up so that, like I said, when I push down, my paint comes in very, very close to where I'm putting it down. I want my paint to come in as soon as possible when I get down to the bottom with my air. And other than that, it's just adjust your air pressure, play around with your paint mix a little bit. Like I said, you want to try and get it so that it's the consistency of milk, maybe a little thinner. If you want to paint like me, if you want to go 1-to-1, then you're going to definitely have to use a lot more air pressure. Not as easy to control it. Just can cause a lot more problems. So I'm just going to make one more air adjustment on this thing and see if I can get this exactly where I want it. Yep, there we go. So now my paint is coming in with just a very, very slight pullback on the trigger. It is just literally a matter of how you want your paint mixed and how you like to work. Excuse me. If you want to be able to do super fine detail, then this is the best way to go. By getting your paint thinned out exactly where it needs to be, getting your brush set up just in a standard way. There's nothing special, like I said, about the way that I set up my brush. It is literally just put the needle all the way in, set up your needle control valve so that it's snug. Sorry, I just got a tickle in my throat all of a sudden here. But I am going to go just a little bit thinner yet. It's a good thing because that's all that's left in that can. And the main reason I'm going a little bit thinner is because I also like to be able to get the paint where I want it, but be able to drop my air pressure a little bit more. So as you can see right now, the paint's pretty much running right off. You can see the wood grain through it. Load her up and try again. See what happens. So like I said, my goal now is to try and get my pressure down a little bit and still have the same kind of control as I did. Put that up there, move this over a little bit. There we go. So there, just by taking that thickness of the paint down just that little bit more. There's something in there. Okay, so I just dropped my air pressure just a little bit more. As far in as I can zoom. But now I can get super fine lines, I can get my brush right down close to the medium. And it still gives the ability to really blend that out. So you're almost working it like a candy when you get it to this stage. And then you just make the areas you want just a tick darker. So say if this was a fade in a sky or something, and then hit it with another coat. You can lay out a really nice fade this way. And one of the things about mixing your paint so thin is that you don't use a lot of paint. So your paint will actually last you for a long time. I mean, of course, there are going to be those occasions where you want to blast the paint on, you want it nice and thick. Those are the occasions you're going to go through your paint. Crap, finger slipped. Was working nicely there. As soon as my hand starts going too far, I end up pushing too hard. But yeah, like, I mean, at this point in time, I'm going to actually drop my air pressure a little more. So yeah, when you get down to these really low air pressures like this, you still will get tip buildup. There's no question about that. But once you start getting, with the House of Kolor, once you start getting the formula down, it's not hard to get that to work. So I mean, that, just so you know, that's the length of my finger. And when I sign my paintings that I do, I always airbrush them. I don't sign with a brush or a different medium. I airbrush my signature. Takes a little bit longer, but it looks so much better when you're doing an airbrushed piece to actually airbrush your signature to. So anyway, So there's your mix basically. Like I said, you start off at a 1-to-1, add a little bit of retarder, and then just thin it out until you get it to the point where you're comfortable with the paint response to where you have your brush set up and where you like it to respond. So the adjustments, like I said, my brush is set up pretty much like anybody else's. My needle is all the way in, snug up in the tip, which is, as far as I know, that's the way you're supposed to have them set up. And the only thing that's different is my air pressure and my paint mix. My paint is super thin, almost to the point of being more of an ink than a paint. The only thing you have to be careful with, and this goes with a lot of paints, is that if you thin them out too much, the binders will start to break down. So that's something that, again, it's just a matter of, in my case, because I've been mixing it for so many years, I know the ratio, not really the ratio, but by eye and by feel and by look of the paint, exactly how I have to mix it, whether I need to add more reducer or not. And I always add just little bits of reducer at a time, because then you don't have to add paint, which then you gotta pretty much start playing again. So, and like there's with House of Kolor, you've also got your inner coat clears, all that kind of stuff. They have quite a selection of different kinds of paints. I didn't really want to get into doing that stuff on tonight's. If you have specific questions on the clear coats or candies or anything like that, feel free just to leave a comment and I will read that and get back to you. Apparently there's not a huge amount of videos that show House of Kolor in an airbrush kind of way, I guess. Most of it is more for base painting and stuff like that. So 1-to-1 mix, that kind of stuff, fairly stock, I guess. I really love to airbrush with this stuff though. I really, really do. I find that it's much more controllable than most of the paints out there. It flows really, really nice when you get the mix just right. Like what I might do with that mix of red now, I might just add a tick more retarder to it, and then it should be good. It should flow really, really nice. There should be no issues with it. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know on mixing up House of Kolor to do airbrush work with it. Like I said, if you do have any questions, if you think I missed anything, or if there, anything at all, please just leave a message in the comments and I will get back to you for sure. All right, and I guess that's pretty much all I need to show you tonight, because it was just on brush setup and paint mixing. So that's a pretty simple one for this time around. We'll get back into doing some of the other stuff here a little bit later. And if you have any requests on other instructional videos that you'd like to see, please leave a message again in the comments. And I'm trying to do that. I want you guys to be the ones that are deciding what gets done in the way of tutorials. I mean, I'm here for you guys. So airbrush tutorials, by the way, because I had somebody else that took that a whole different way. So anyway, yeah. Okay, there you go, guys. Like I said, the paint mixing now, like once you get to that stage, is personal preference. So I'm just trying to give you the basics on how to mix the paint, how to set up your gun. Like I said, my gun is set up the same as anybody else's. It's set up the way it's supposed to be right out of the box. So your needle is tight up into the nozzle. And like I said, I just basically play around with my paint mix and my airflow, and that's what allows me to get that really fine line if I want to. When I crank up my air, I can get the really, really nice fades. I can get whatever I want basically with the paint mix that way. It just makes things so much easier
when you're trying to spray little tiny details and actually control it. Like for myself, I'm an illustrator. I do a lot of really tiny detail in my paintings, and I use my airbrush for all of it. So it's, you get down there, you're down to 6, 7 pounds, maybe 8 pounds of air pressure. Your paint is super thin. It's, you know, and if you want to do smaller and tighter stuff, yeah, you can thin it out farther than what I've taken it here. So, like I said, if you have any questions about it, please leave them in the comments. I will get back to you. Not a problem whatsoever. Thank you again for supporting KO Airbrushing and the tutorials. And if you think you're getting anything out of them, please like, share, do what you can. The more people we get here, the better I can do for you guys. That's pretty much all there is to it. So if you think there's anybody out there that might benefit from this, please send them a link. And I will be back again. I do not know as of yet what the next tutorial is going to be on. I need some people to basically do some requesting. And once I get some requests in, then I'll sit down and decide what we're going to work on. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys. Have a great night. Hope you got something out of that. Like I said, leave any questions in the comments, and I will definitely get back to you. And we'll see you here again next time. Bye for now.